Bina worked 12 years for the family business, but her dad gave it to her sister and her fiancé, then begged for help when they abandoned him. Bina, 36, was fired from the firm that her father had started only 8 months before. For background, she'd been with the family firm for nearly 12 years. Her grandfather on her father's side created a jewelry business that they own. It was passed down to her father, and Bina assumed it would come to her next. After all, she is the older sister and has been interested in business since she was a teenager. Her father always told her that he expected her to someday take over the firm. Her sister, 33, never appeared interested in a profession. She only wanted to marry and start a family. So if Dad was going to have an heir to the company, it was supposed to be Bina. This had always been taken for granted. There was no formal documentation of it, but Bina supposes she should have planned for anything. Similarly, Bina had been her father's personal assistant for 12 years. She even abandoned her first job after only 2 years because she wanted to obtain real-world experience before joining her father. She did not want to come across as entitled. However, she left her job once her father requested her to start working for him. Despite everything she had done, Bina was kicked out of the firm in favor of her sister and her tremendously wealthy fiancé. Bina's sister hadn't even been a member of the family for the previous 15 years. She made a few terrible actions, and her parents cut her off shortly after she turned 18. She had announced that she would not be attending college and instead wanted to explore and discover herself. That did not sit well with her parents. They offered her an ultimatum: either attend college or leave. Being the type of person she is, she opted to leave and live with her partner at the moment. They ended their romance after only 6 months together. Then she showed up at their door, pleading to be allowed back into the family. Before she went, she told her parents a lot of terrible things, such as how she no longer needed them and how she would be better off without a family like theirs. She also said that they were not good enough for her because her boyfriend's family had a much better financial situation than them. She had insulted and humiliated them before going away. When she returned, her father informed her that the terms he had imposed previously remained in effect. If she wanted to return, she would have to go to college and earn a degree, regardless of what she selected. Otherwise, she may stay outside. Bina's sister attempted to argue and fight her way back into the family, but her father was resolute. She chose to depart again, vowing never to return. For the next 15 years, they only saw her at family gatherings and never communicated with her otherwise. They discovered information about her life updates from other relatives because she refused to speak with them directly. Bina's mother and Bina attempted to contact her several times, but because they were on good terms with her father, she refused to speak with them. To her credit, she kept her word and never returned until her father chose to make touch with her again. During that period, she sorted out her life, but not in the way they expected. She never attended college since she wasn't interested. Instead, she lived with a friend for a period, acquired a job, and began working to support the life she desired. Bina believes that event helped her mature significantly. She changed jobs frequently, but for the past few years, she had worked at an advertising agency. Their family maintained track of her life through other relatives. She knew about them as well, thanks to the same family. Bina's father became very ill about a year ago, and they were on the verge of losing him due to heart failure. The cardiologist informed them that his condition was serious and that he needed to make significant lifestyle adjustments. During this health scare, her father decided it was time to contact Bina's sister and reconcile their relationship. By this point, Bina's sister had matured significantly over the previous 15 years, and she finally accepted to rejoin the family. She came to see them alone, and they didn't chat much about her life because they were too occupied reminiscing about the past. She didn't want to make it all about herself, so she didn't reveal anything about what she'd been up to. The information they didn't obtain from her came from their relatives. They knew how she was doing professionally, but not much about her personal life. Anyway, she seemed pleased to be back, and they were all focused on the reconciliation of father and daughter. It was a really emotional reunion, and Bina was delighted at the time, not knowing what would happen next. When she returned to see them for the second time, she brought her fiancé, which surprised everyone. She informed them they'd been dating for 3 years and were only recently engaged. None of them in the family knew about it, so they didn't find out through their regular channels. They'd kept it under wraps. The flow of information was not one-sided, thanks to their relatives. She knew their father had some health issues, but she had no idea how serious they were. That is why she had not visited them sooner, and she felt it was inappropriate to announce her engagement at the time. Now that everything had cooled down, she decided it was time to introduce him to the family, so she invited him along. He appeared like a pleasant guy, and Bina could tell he was wealthy. His clothes, watch, and shoes were all costly. Bina felt glad for her sister because it appeared that she had finally found someone who fit her expectations. He was financially secure, had a clear vision for his life, and had his future planned out. After speaking with both of them, they discovered that her fiancé, like her first boyfriend, was the son of a wealthy man who operated a fast food franchise. Unlike her first relationship, this guy looked serious about her, and they were clearly in love. Bina was truly thrilled for her and complimented both of them. She never expected her father, or even her sister and her fiancé, to do what they did next. However, after only 3 weeks of knowing him, Bina's father believed it was best if they take over the family business. He contacted Bina one morning and asked her to come home so they could chat about something. Bina was at work, running everything since her father's heart health had deteriorated, and she was essentially the boss at that point, even though he hadn't officially resigned. Bina knew retirement was imminent, and she was convinced that she would be the next in line to take over as CEO, but that day altered everything. Suddenly, Bina's sister and her fiancé were in the running to take over the business she had been running for years. When Bina arrived at her parents' house, her sister and her fiancé were not present, but her parents were, and they looked grim. After some casual chat, her father dropped the bombshell. Bina initially assumed he was joking, but when she learned he was genuine, she couldn't believe it. When Bina inquired why he would make such a radical decision after just 3 weeks of knowing him, he said he had reasons but refused to discuss them. After much fighting, Dad finally revealed that he thought Bina's sister and her fiancé would be better at operating the firm than she was. The cherry on top was that he thought gifting them the business would be a welcome gift to bring them back into the family as they were about to begin a new chapter by getting married. He thought this would be their wedding gift. Bina attempted to persuade him that this was a terrible idea. A wedding gift doesn't have to be the size of an entire business simply because the guy appeared wealthy. In addition, her father had always told her that when he retired, she would inherit the firm. Bina had formed her entire life around that expectation, and now he was taking it away from her to give to individuals who had been out of their lives for 15 years. Bina tried to tell him that maybe he could make them business partners and bargained and negotiated with him because they were talking about her future, but her father was adamant that it would be better if they took over. He contended that because her sister's fiancé's father had previously established a successful business, they would be able to grow their jewelry business twice as quickly as Bina could. Bina begged him for just one opportunity, but he wouldn't listen. Bina was heartbroken, not just because she was losing something so important, but also because she had dedicated 12 years of her life to the business, only to wind up with nothing. Worse, she still hadn't won her father's respect. If he had truly recognized the time and effort she had put into the firm, he would not have dismissed her. That was the day Bina resolved to cut all links with her family, because she had nothing else to say to them. She had hoped her sister would fight for her, but she also let her down. Her sister and her fiancé eagerly received the so-called wedding gift, which was effectively Bina's life's labor. Bina's sister knew she'd always aspired to take over the family business after her father retired. Bina had talked about it nonstop since she was 13. She knew exactly what she was doing when she took that gift. She was snatching Bina's dreams and transforming them into her own. To make matters worse, she took to social media to thank their parents for the magnificent wedding gift and then used the post to announce her engagement. The most upsetting aspect of it was that no one from the family contacted Bina after that. When she left her father's house, it felt as if everyone had stopped caring about her. Bina felt used, and it appeared that the 12 years she had spent in the business had been completely wasted. Fortunately, she had enough savings to fall back on for the following few months. Bina did nothing except try to put her life back together. Everything had fallen apart. That happened 8 months ago. Since then, Bina began therapy because she could feel herself slipping into depression and knew she wanted to treat it before it worsened. Seeing her sister's social media post made her nauseous, so she blocked her. Bina also informed her relatives that she was no longer in contact with her family and did not want to hear anything about them, no matter how important the news. They followed her desires and kept everything a secret for her. As a result, Bina had no notion that her father's health had been slowly declining over the previous few months. Her sister and her fiancé seemed unconcerned about it. She only found out a week ago when her father contacted her from the hospital. He informed her that he had suffered a cardiac arrest in the middle of the night and asked her to come see him. Because she had banned his number, he called her using someone else's phone. Bina felt awful for a moment, but then she remembered what he had done to her 8 months before, and the remorse subsided slightly. After that phone call, Bina promised to come meet him immediately. Bina dropped everything and headed to the hospital. When she arrived, her mother and father were present, but her sister and her fiancé were nowhere to be found. Bina found this perplexing because she assumed they were close, especially since they ran the family business. She couldn't help but ask her parents where her sister and her fiancé were as soon as she walked into the hospital room. With great regret, her father informed her that Bina's sister and her fiancé had both claimed to be too busy to come. Bina was shocked. Running the business for 12 years taught her that it was a profitable venture that almost ran itself. Unless there was a serious catastrophe, there was no reason to be at work all the time. That's how it worked when she was in control. Bina couldn't say how things were going under their control, but when her father said they were too busy to see him, she inquired whether they had paid him any visits since his heart attack. He admitted they had not. He had contacted them, but they had only texted back, stating they were too busy and would come after he was discharged. These details astounded Bina, and she could tell her father recognized he had made a huge mistake in handing over the reins of the firm to her sister and her fiancé. He explained that one of the main reasons he called was to apologize for what he had done. He stated that he felt guilty and sorry for pushing Bina out of the firm despite all of her hard work and effort. Now he wants to make things right by inviting her back into the family and the business. He described how heartbroken he was when Bina's sister and her fiancé did not arrive at the hospital. He realized that they didn't care about him in the same manner that he cared for them. He also informed Bina that this was not the first time they had refused to show up for him. They had become increasingly estranged in recent months. After he handed over the firm, their visits grew less frequent. They used to come every other day to check on him when his health began to deteriorate, but now they claim they are too busy with work to come by. This did not sit well with him or Bina because they both know no one is that busy. It wouldn't have been difficult for them to take an hour out of their day, especially given they lived just a few blocks away from her parents' house. Bina's father had said nothing at the moment, but they had passed a limit, and he could no longer take their contempt. He wanted to reclaim his firm and give it to the person who actually deserved it, Bina. They discussed everything in the hospital room, and he formally invited Bina back into the firm. She was overjoyed. Bina's father apologized for everything, and while she wasn't fully over it, she forgave him since gaining back what she had worked for meant everything to her. If forgiving her father was the price, she was willing to pay it. The difficulty now is that Bina's father had previously discussed this with her sister. He informed her he wanted her to leave the business because he had discovered that, while he had always cared for her, she had never been there for him. He couldn't stand the disrespect any longer, so he resolved to reclaim the company and give it to the rightful owner. He told her that they'd have to look after themselves. Unsurprisingly, Bina's sister was upset. For whatever reason, she blamed Bina for everything. She contacted Bina this morning and lashed out, accusing her of being a horrible person, and said she couldn't believe she would be so rude to her. Bina isn't really sure why she's acting so crazily. She thinks there's something they don't know, but she's acting as if she's lost everything and it's all Bina's fault. The reality is, Bina believes this is her own fault. She chose not to see their father after he suffered a cardiac arrest, which is a dangerous situation. She could have taken time off work to visit him. She was the one acting selfishly, and now Bina is receiving what she's always deserved. 8 months ago, she had no trouble receiving a present she knew she didn't deserve. So why should Bina turn her back on something she actually deserves? She was devastated, and Bina tried to console her, but she hung up mid-sentence. Now Bina is wondering if she is the evil guy here. Bina feels like she is constantly taking the blame, and she is fatigued. She wonders if she is a jerk for allowing her father to ask her sister and her fiancé to leave the family business so that she could retake it. Update 1. Thank you all very much for your responses. Bina felt she didn't deserve her sister's criticism, but hearing it from you all has reassured her. If people who know nothing about their lives believe Bina deserves the business, she has nothing further to say in her defense. She doesn't think she has to, either. It's been a few days since she last spoke with her sister, and Bina hasn't heard back. The good news is that she hasn't blocked Bina on any platform, so she supposes that's a good indication. Bina can't shake the notion that there's more going on than she's admitting. She finds it difficult to imagine that someone with a wealthy fiancé would act in this manner simply because they lost control of their firm. Bina believes that not everything is as it appears with her fiancé. Some of you inquired about this in the comments section of the original piece, but Bina did not address it since she did not believe it was important at the time. Now, however, she assumes her fiancé's family is struggling financially. According to what she's heard, his father's company has suffered considerable losses over the last year and has been unable to recover. Bina believes her sister and her fiancé saw their family business as an opportunity to sneak in and take over as a backup plan. She still doesn't understand why her sister reacted so strongly when she realized that Bina was being allowed to rejoin the company and she was being asked to step down. If her fiancé's family was still financially secure, she wouldn't have to be concerned. However, she was distraught, and something about the situation did not make sense. Bina has a hunch she will tell the truth shortly. Fortunately, Bina's father never signed any agreements or contracts that would have legally passed the firm to her sister and her fiancé. That would have been disastrous. He remained CEO the entire time, with them reporting to him in the same position Bina had held. He had been educating them to take over, but it is now evident that this will not happen. Bina spoke with her father, who informed her that her sister is quite sad, but he cannot afford to worry about her sentiments right now. His primary objective is to transfer the business to Bina so that she can take control and manage everything. He's already working with a lawyer to create the required documentation, and Bina should be taking over very shortly. To be honest, she's looking forward to the adjustment, and her sister's dramatic outbursts can't bring her down right now. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been a few weeks since Bina's last post, and she wanted to give you an update. She is now the new CEO of her father's jewelry firm. The transition is complete, and it feels fantastic to finally be in charge. There were some difficulties throughout the changeover, primarily due to her sister's intervention, but it's finally complete. Bina's sister is not thrilled about any of this, and Bina can now confirm that her theory was true. She and her fiancé were attempting to establish a foothold in their family business, despite knowing that her fiancé's father's company was faltering. They saw the family firm as a safety net in case his father's company failed. Apparently, it was Bina's sister's idea to persuade her father to reintegrate them into the family by transferring the firm to her fiancé. Unfortunately, her father fell for it. He revealed to Bina recently that he was not thinking clearly at the time. He was enticed by the thought that someone from a successful business family could run the company better than Bina could. Bina's father first intended to keep her in her previous position, but when Bina stated unequivocally that she wanted to be the company's CEO or nothing, he became enraged. That's what caused the 8 months of anguish for both of them. Fortunately, Bina's father came to his senses just in time to avoid a huge catastrophe. As it turns out, her sister's fiancé and his father's firm are in terrible difficulties, with their market credibility virtually wiped out. Bina had heard reports that their business was likely to fail, but she didn't believe them. She assumed that if something significant happened, her father would contact her, and he expected her to do the same if she was aware. Unfortunately, neither of them contacted each other, which was a poor decision. Her sister recently revealed the truth. She contacted Bina soon before the move was complete, admitting that they needed work because they didn't know how long her fiancé's father could keep his firm running. She asked Bina for assistance. Bina told her she'd think about it, and she honestly doesn't mind hiring them. However, knowing their true goals from the outset, she can no longer trust them. That's what Bina is fighting with right now. She wants to help her, but how can she hire somebody she doesn't trust? Bina told her she needed time to make a decision, and she agreed to wait. Update 3. After careful consideration, Bina has chosen not to hire her sister and her fiancé. She knows this may appear selfish to some, but she can't trust them. When her father offered them the business, they accepted without hesitation, and for 8 months, they had no sympathy or concern for anyone other than themselves. Bina does not want folks like that working with or around her. It was difficult, but she informed her sister that she couldn't assist her. As expected, she did not take it well. She came into Bina's office the other day, threw a fit, and accused Bina of being callous and selfish. She even stated she regretted giving Bina the company back, which she thought odd because it was never her decision, It was her father's. Her assertion that she did Bina a huge favor by letting her take over the company was absurd. Bina might have tolerated her actions, but her statement irritated her. Bina informed her that she had never done her any favors, not now nor in the past. She never cared about Bina. Therefore, she couldn't expect Bina to care about her right now. Bina calmly asked her to leave, but she refused and kept screaming at her, undermining her in her own office. At that point, Bina had no choice but to phone the police and have her removed. Bina is too busy at work to deal with unnecessary drama. When the cops arrived, she didn't say much and eventually left. It's been a few days since the incident, and Bina still hasn't heard from her. She assumes she'll leave them alone now, but even if she doesn't, Bina's not worried. She'll get a restraining order if necessary.